Hello and welcome back to Sleepy Time, fairy tales, children's bedtime, stories, and meditation designed to make bedtime a dream. In a realm untouched by sorrow, the kingdom of Lyra flourished. Its towers of white stone kissed the heavens, and its fields yielded endless bounty. It was a place of gentle songs and gentle lives, governed by a just king, and beloved by all who called its Greenland's home. Peace was the air they breathed, a tranquil rhythm that had beaten for centuries without fail. At the heart of this peace was Princess Mira. She wore her title not as a crown, but as a quiet promise to be kind. She found more solace in the company of the forest's creatures than in the pageantry of the court. Her spirit was a gentle flame, warming those who felt forgotten and seeing the light in even the most timid of heart. But one day, the sky fell silent. A shadow, vast and swift, blotted out the sun, racing across the valley like a stain of ink on parchment. The air grew cold, heavy with an ancient dread that the people of Lyra had only ever known from legends. The kingdom held its breath, a collective heart frozen in a moment of pure, unadulterated fear. Then, the source of the shadow revealed itself. A dragon, larger than any tale had dared to describe, descended from the clouds. Its scales were the color of moss and jade, its eyes twin embers of fury. It unleashed a roar not of malice, but of earth-shattering agony, a sound that shook the very foundations of Lyra and the souls of all who heard it. The king, a man of action and steel, saw only a monster. He called his banners and summoned his knights, their armor gleaming with righteous purpose. "A beast has threatened our home," he declared. "It will be met with the sword and the spear." His words were of war, a swift and final answer to the terror that now circled their peaks. Panic flooded the streets of Lyra. The people, who had only known peace, were scattered by a terror they could not comprehend. They saw not a creature, but an apocalypse given form. Every shadow was a threat, every gust of wind a prelude to fire. The kingdom's gentle rhythm was broken, replaced by the frantic, discordant music of fear. Yet, Princess Mira heard something else in the dragon's cry. Beneath the layers of thunderous rage, she heard a note of pure despair. It was the same sound she had heard from a wolf who had lost its pack, from a bird with a broken wing. It was not the sound of a monster. It was the sound of a heart breaking. While the castle prepared for war, Mira prepared for a different kind of encounter. She knew in her soul that swords could not mend the sorrow she heard. Ignoring the frantic calls to take shelter, she made a choice that no one else could understand. She would not meet the beast with a weapon, but with an open heart. Under the cloak of twilight, she slipped away from the noise of sharpening steel and fearful prayers. With only her faithful steed and a white flag of truce, she left the world she knew. Each step took her further from the certainty of her home, and deeper into a mystery that the rest of her kingdom was too afraid to solve. She soon arrived at the edge of the Whispering Woods, a forest from which travelers did not often return. It was said to be the dragon's domain, a place where the trees themselves held ancient grievances. To her people, this was the border of the known world. For Myra, it was the first step on a necessary journey. The air inside the woods was thick and heavy, smelling of damp earth and forgotten time. The silence was a living thing, broken only by the snap of a twig under her horse's hoof. Sunlight struggled to pierce the canopy, casting down shifting, ghostly columns of light that made the shadows dance and play tricks on the eye. She found signs of the dragon's passage, but they were not signs of destruction. A giant footprint, deep enough to be a small pond, was pressed into the earth. Trees were not burned, but simply pushed aside, as if by a creature moving with a heavy, burdened heart, too lost in its own world to lash out at the one around it. As night fell, the forest revealed its true magic. The darkness was not empty, but alive with a soft, ethereal glow. Mosses on ancient oaks shimmered like constellations, and clusters of fungi pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light. It was a place of deep enchantment, a sanctuary that would only reveal its beauty to those who entered without fear. It was then that she heard the sound again, carried on the cool night air, It was no longer a roar that shook mountains, but a low, guttural lament. It was a sound of grief, raw and unfiltered, a deep, shuddering sob that seemed to come from the very soul of the earth. She knew she was close. Guided by the sound of sorrow, she dismounted and crept forward. Parting a curtain of phosphorescent vines, she looked out into a hidden clearing. What she saw was not a monster's lair, but a scene of profound and solemn beauty. A natural cathedral bathed in the silver light of the full moon. There, in the heart of the clearing, lay the dragon. Its immense form, which had seemed so terrifying in the sky, now looked impossibly vulnerable. Its wings were folded tightly, its powerful limbs drawn in. It was a fortress of muscle and scale that had crumbled from within, laid low by a grief too heavy to bear. Mira watched as a single, perfect tear welled in the corner of the dragon's eye. It gathered, shimmering with reflected moonlight, before tracing a slow, heavy path down its cheek. In that one tear, she saw the truth of its pain, a sorrow so immense it could only be expressed in the silent, glistening language of grief. In that moment, every fear she ever had was washed away. Her instincts had been true. This was no mindless beast of destruction. This was a being in mourning. Her quest was no longer to pacify a threat, but to offer comfort to a soul who was utterly and completely alone in its despair. With a deep breath that steadied her soul, Mira stepped out from the tree line. She left the shadows behind, entering the sacred, moonlit space of the dragon's sorrow. She did not raise her flag of truce. Her presence alone would have to be message enough. Her steps were light, careful not to disturb the solemn quiet of the clearing. The sound of her approach, however soft, stirred the great beast. Its head, larger than a carriage, lifted from the earth. Its golden eyes, glowing with inner fire, fixed upon her. A growl, like the shifting of tectonic plates, rumbled deep within, its chest a warning, born not of anger, but of a broken heart, wary of any further pain. The air crackled with tension. Before the dragon stood, the daughter of the men who hunted his kind, a small, fragile creature in a world of giants. He watched her, every muscle coiled, ready to unleash the fire of his grief upon this intruder. He could not understand why she had sought him out, or why she did not tremble before him. Mira did not falter. She stopped, giving the great creature its space. Then, in a gesture of profound respect, she slowly knelt upon the soft earth. She laid her silk flag on the ground between them, an offering of peace, a symbol that she came, not as a conqueror or a threat, but as a supplicant before its immense sorrow. The dragon watched her every move. This was not the posture of a knight or a hunter. Her gesture was one of surrender, of peace. The deep growl in its chest quieted, replaced by a low, questioning rumble. It tilted its massive head, its ancient mind trying to decipher the intent of this strange, fearless human. Seeing its guard lower, if only for a moment, Mira rose to her feet. She closed the distance between them until she stood in the shadow of its great head. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion that held no threat, she raised her hand, her small, pale fingers reaching out towards the mighty, scaled creature of legend. Her fingers brushed against its scales. They were cool, smooth, like ancient river stones worn by centuries of flowing water. At her touch, the great dragon shuddered, but it did not pull away. It was a simple, profound connection or bridge of empathy built across a chasm of fear and misunderstanding. In that touch, a silent story passed between them. She felt its loss, a raw, gaping wound in its solid image of a shattered egg, the scent of smoke, the crushing silence of an empty nest. It was a grief that needed no words, a sorrow she could now feel as if it were her own. She finally understood. The dragon, in turn, felt her compassion. It was a warmth it had not known since the loss of its child, a pure, unconditional empathy that asked for nothing in return. A long, shuddering sigh escaped its great lungs, and with it, the tension of ages seemed to bleed out into the forest floor. It was no longer alone. "I am so sorry for your pain," she whispered. her voice barely disturbing the quiet of the clearing. "I did not come to fight you. I came because I heard your heart breaking. Let me help you. Let us find who did this." Her words were a balm, a promise of shared purpose in the face of shared sorrow. As if in response to her vow, the moon broke free of the clouds, bathing them in a brilliant, hopeful light. The dragon, this creature of myth and terror, gently nudged her hand with its snout, a gesture of trust and acceptance. In that quiet clearing, an alliance unlike any the world had ever seen was forged. Dawn arrived, painting the edges of the sky hues of rose and gold. The dragon rose to its full, magnificent height, its sorrow now tempered by a new resolve. The princess stood beside it, no longer just a girl, but a diplomat, an ally, a kindred spirit. Their journey of grief had ended, but their quest for justice had just begun. Thanks for your listening and have a sweet dream. Subscribe for more bedtime stories.